Hello. In this session, I'm going to go through some corrective type equalization with this plugin, Tokyo Dawn Records, Tokyo Dawn Labs Artbiter. I think of this as a dynamic EQ. They refer to it as a frequency-specific spectral balancer. It works in a slightly different way to a standard dynamic EQ in that it determines its attenuation, its gain reduction in any band relative to a curve, a weighting curve, which is this one here, 4.5 dBs per octave. And that is the one used in span. Master mode, here there's a slope of 4.5 dBs per octave roll-off. That is a good reference for commercial music. So this track has a particular problem with the snare being too pronounced. I want to try and treat that with Artbiter, but also a couple of other issues can be treated within this single interface. Just to show you the other plugins I have on this project. Firstly is the Shadow Hills mastering compressor, and I have a video using that in my dynamics tutorials. I have a Better Maker EQ, which is doing some corrective bass taming and high-end lift. Again, there's another video on that. I've got the TDR limiter, which is achieving our integrated loudness and true peak limiting, span for spectral reference, and insight for loudness reference. So I'll just play this with Artbiter enabled and Artbiter bypassed. So here we go, bypassed. Then enabled. So it looks like there's some quite heavy EQ being applied here, but it is only affecting specific frequencies when they occur in the mix. Bypass again. Okay, yeah, so I think the snare is a little pronounced. It's not too bad. Let me add another instance of Artbiter and show you how I got to that point. So firstly, the snare has two key components. There's the body of the snare, the hit of the snare skin, and then there's a more high frequency raspy content. Let's deal with the body. So I'm going to play the audio. You'll see the spectral curve in here. Identify the snare body and then attenuate it by locating this band around those frequencies. So it's quite clear here. The snare is around about 350 Hertz. Take it down too much, show you the result. So that's mostly attenuating when the snare hits. And that's okay, it is impacting the other instruments a little bit. So let's try this option here, which is flat top. And that's the type of EQ I've not found in any other EQ. It's really good at isolating specific frequencies and attenuating in this way. Okay, yeah, so you see now that's mostly just attenuating when the body of the snare is present. Just going to add another band by double clicking. Change this to a high shelf. Bring this down. So this is not as prevalent in the mix. That will just tame a little bit of that high frequency content. Just going to open span again so we can have a look at any other potential issues here. So I think there's another peak around about 600 hertz, and that could be another harmonic of the snare. I don't think it's too bad, but I'm just going to add another band around that frequency, 600. Quite subtle. Let's see what we get. So yeah, I think it's actually a component of the guitar, and I don't want to take that out too much actually. But as this progresses, observe these frequencies here, around about 2K and above. And this guitar solo is quite nice. I'm just going to add another band because there are certain elements of that stick out a little bit too much. So that's just bringing those components down when they're present. Okay, one last thing, the bass peak here, round about 65 hertz or so, is still a little bit pronounced, even though I am attenuating it in the Pultec Clo. So I'm also going to treat that frequency. We can see it quite clearly on the analyzer. And again, although the range here looks quite drastic, it's only attenuating when we have that frequency content present. So it will largely ignore the other instruments and just affect the problem instruments and frequencies. So here now we have the full settings, and I'll bypass. Yeah, focus more on the snare and the snare body, that's the main issue. This is bypassed, and I'll now bring it back in. So overall that's a much tighter balance in the master now. Okay, so yeah, Arbiter, one of my favorite dynamic EQs or spectral balancers. I find it really useful for corrective type purposes like this, and I recommend checking it out, or other dynamic EQs, which I will go through in another video. So thanks for listening. Hope this has been useful.